there's going to be some crazy stuff that happens in the next 5 to 10 years. I think when we look back in 10 years of sort of how much change has taken place, it's going to be like me when I look back now over 3 decades of my career. We may see the same amount of change in that 10-year period that I've seen in my last 30 years, which is massive. But I think that's the potential of what could be coming at us.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and it is part 2 of our 2-part series with business and technology executive David Hartley. And in this conversation, he shares his insights about hybrid working and how it affects you, the bookkeeping business owner. All right, let's get to that conversation. As small businesses, there's so many things that we could be doing that we're not, that we know we should be doing. And AI is actually helping us get to those other things because we can get the workhorse doing a lot of this heavy lifting, and then we can actually get to executing on some of it with the team that we have. So it's not about it's not in a small business, likely not at this point, it's just enabling us to do more with less. And then eventually all that evolves too, because there's going to be new skill sets needed. And I really like what you're saying about the knowledge that an individual has about all of that information. Like you had given the example, there's all of these choices, but having that acumen of knowing, well, what is the most successful and fruitful way to go about doing something, that's extremely valuable. And also, here's AI and all of it's going on, and then you've got information. The world's going to change around how we share information, I think. If you think about here, if I have information and I dump it into the public realm, well, that's what we've been doing with the internet. We're putting all our information into the internet, and now these machines are taking that information. The world might change. It might be like, I'm going to keep my information to myself and keep it for only these people and monetize that. Like, it's kind of similar to what you're saying, is that your knowledge, your expertise, your experiences are valuable. Who gets access to that? And are they, what's the value of it and all that good stuff? So,
and that's actually a good point. So I think one of the obstacles to people picking up on this, I think, was just how do you get started? So I think that was obstacle 1, and we've talked about that. Yeah. The second thing that's interesting that I'm seeing throw companies off is security. Because when you ask these tools to go out and gather all this information, and they're a calculator for words, and they can go make sense of all this stuff, well, if a rogue employee asks, well, go get me the payroll records for how much did this person make in whatever, if you don't have your security permissions established correctly, it will go out and get that data and bring it back to you. So a lot of companies are starting to experiment with this, and they're like saying, whoa. No, that there's a line here. It shouldn't have been able to get to that. Should have just got to our policies and, some of those types of things. No, you didn't have your security set up correctly. And somebody at some point knew you were going to have to come back and fix this, but it's never been done. So a lot of companies now are doing security audits to understand who has access to what, and we've got to lock this stuff down before we start releasing these tools. So I see a lot of use case development and some things going on where people are trying to use it, but there's this parallel path of the cybersecurity aspect of this, of actually locking down data. So it's interesting watching those kind of move in lockstep. And of course, some companies already had the security locked down, so they're good to go. Others are, it's slowing things down because they're having to fix security before they can really use these tools the way they want to.
Very interesting. Now, in the beginning of the podcast, you talked about some exciting stuff that you're doing. We've talked about a lot of exciting stuff so far, primarily around AI. What else is top of mind for you that you're excited about?
Well, I think just the role of advisors and the role of CPAs as that changes. So I was specifically brought into Anders because my 30 years of experience, or 28 or so at the time, whatever. Basically, I had been exposed to healthcare. I had run a technology department before. Like I was an audit CPA person. So I brought all that stuff to Anders, where we're making a heavy push into advisory services. So for me, it's interesting to watch the profession evolve in terms of, historically for 100 years, the firm's been, the profession has really been more backwards focused. We want to make sure that things have been done correctly. So audit and I got to do a tax return for my prior results, but that doesn't really change a lot of behavior. I think what we're seeing now, and we have over the last couple of decades, but I think this shift is going to become especially profound in the next few years, which is the value of advisors and the value of CPAs is really to affect future outcomes. And we can improve outcomes based on our skill sets and the things that we know. Oh, and by the way, if we have a great tool set, we can get there faster and be better advisors. So for us, that means, so we've got our virtual CFO practice. We've got 70 people spread all around the country that deliver virtual CFO services for clients. Another major part of our advisory practice is our technology business. So we outsource or co-source technology for small to mid-sized companies, and we help them implement and use Microsoft technologies. And then we have other things that, we help with recruiting for clients. We'll do forensics, fraud, litigation services, all of those types of things. And it's interesting just watching as we truly get future focused and we realize that's where we're going to add the value in the future. Sort of watching that evolution in the profession is one of the most interesting things. And then obviously what we're doing at Anders and some of the challenges, like we recognize in our service portfolio, there are things our clients need from us that we can't deliver. And we need those capabilities to be able to do that. So we are both investing internally in growing our own people to learn and do those services, but we're also out looking at other smaller boutique firms that can bring something to us that we don't have, where together, the two of us together can create more value than either one of us on our own. So watching those things evolve and watching people get interested in that and really think about CPA firms really as businesses, because I think for a while there really wasn't. But then when private equity came in and started actually putting valuations on firms and doing deals for firms, then I think it got really real that, holy smokes, this is a really attractive business. We've got consistent cash flow. We're recession proof. We've got growth opportunities if we focus on the right things. So, there's been a lot of interesting things happen in the last few years. And I think as we go forward, that pace of change is just going to continue to pick up.
Wow. We'll get back to the interview right after this word from our sponsor. Here on the Successful Bookkeeper podcast, we want to help you work smarter and build a business you love. Chances are you want to do the same for your clients. That's where Bill comes in. Bill automates your clients' AP, AR, spend, and expense, and lets them track and manage their cash flow in real time. Do you manage your clients' bill pay? Use Bill Accountant Console to access insights to level up your advisory services, giving your clients better visibility for better business decisions. And if your clients would rather manage their own AP and AR, just refer them to Bill. Sign up for Bill's premium referral program, and you'll get revenue share for your referrals, plus a discount for your clients. Win-win. To learn more about how Bill can help you and your clients, and to sign up for the referral program, visit thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com/Bill. Thank you for hearing from our sponsor. Now let's get back to the interview. So many things and so many opportunities. Just listening, I can hear for our listener in on the bookkeeping side of things is that, there's what you do today, and then there's a whole bunch of things you could be doing tomorrow, and staying in touch and keep paying attention to what's happening in the industry and looking for those opportunities to take the expertise that you have and then mold that and shape that for whatever market opportunity is there. But advisory, we've been talking about advisory for a long time. It's starting to be, whoa, if you're not thinking about or putting your foot into advisory, you may be making a mistake type of time, which is exciting, because guess what? the market needs it desperately. And so if we don't have the people and the knowledge and the technology to service those, it's just bottlenecking what's really needed in the marketplace.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple of aspects to that I think would be interesting or encouraging to your listeners. I think when I think about really remote work and the capabilities just since the pandemic, so in the last 4 years, sort of the true emergence of remote work and how it's more widely accepted. And now you have accesses to resource really anywhere in the world, and you can work with people wherever. And I think that ties in very nicely with the second piece, which is the niching down that is happening. And I think for all your listeners, I think, they may have a niche and not even know it. It's like, well, yeah, I do 4 coffee shops, but that just is 4 of my 20 clients or whatever, or I do 3 dental practices. But you think about that, if you're the bookkeeping firm that specializes in dental practices or specializes, you can now sell anywhere in the country. It used to be that, I've got, maybe a dozen coffee shops in my area. Well, now your addressable market went from 12 to 12 million, whatever the number is. But it's just that whole shift also opens so many doors if you're willing to embrace it. Now, I will say remote work adds a lot of challenges. When everybody comes to the office, that's easy. When everybody's fully remote, that has some challenges, but you can do it. I think the most difficult piece is hybrid. When you're starting to combine people in offices with people that are fully remote, that is a real challenge, and that can be very difficult, and you have to be very intentional about how you handle that. But in general, these are new opportunities that didn't really exist 4, 5, 10 years ago. And now we're in a very different spot as a result of the pandemic. And now you layer in all the AI tools on top of it. And it's like, there's going to be some crazy stuff that happens in the next 5 to 10 years. I think when we look back in 10 years of sort of how much change has taken place, it's going to be like me when I look back now over 3 decades of my career. When I think about, a decade from now, looking back, we may see the same amount of change in that 10-year period that I've seen in my last 30 years, which is massive. But I think that's the potential of what could be coming at us.
It's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Some cool things there that you've just said. My mind is spinning, and I love
Hopefully
it.
That's a good thing.
It's good. It's good. It's exciting. You're dropping some. I'm gonna have to re-listen to this. You're dropping some knowledge bombs here. That is just great. So the hybrid thing. I'm curious. What is the challenge with the hybrid? You're both in office and you got, I'm curious because we've gone ourselves because of the pandemic. We had a very small in-office team. And then when the pandemic hit, we went to full remote. And then I feel like I come to my desk and that's my world, right? I got all of our people, they're located all over the place. I never see anyone face-to-face in our business, very rarely, once a year, maybe twice. And so I'm curious, what is the barriers or challenges with that mixture? Because we don't have the mixture.
Yeah. So if you remember back to the days when it was all in office, you had a certain way of operating and it worked. It worked really well. Kind of there were norms and the culture and sort of it was what it was. And then when everybody went remote, it was sort of like, oh, okay, we're playing by a different set of rules now. And now everybody's remote. So we're all in the same environment. When you change that up and you have some people in office, so you've got a group of 10 people together over here, but then you've got 30 people remote. That dynamic is very difficult because then the 10 people in the office, well, they're getting together, they're going out for happy hour or they're having lunch and they can just all talk to each other and, they have these types of relationships, but the remote people feel very different. And there are some things that you can combat this, but it's challenging. And so when I like to shift from that to recommendations, I think you have to be really intentional about this and you actually have to recognize those differences. And you have to say, wow, the remote people may not, may feel slighted because we did this in the office. How can we make the remote people feel that they're equal with the in-office people? So you've got that. So you've got the culture has to evolve. The expectations have to evolve. Because it used to be when I started my career, how did I learn? Well, I did these mundane things that were routine, but then also I was in the audit room with the senior manager and the partner, and I watched them operate. And that's how I learned my basic professional etiquette, is by watching what were the things that they were talking about? What were the things how did they interact with clients? When they did a phone call, what did they do and how did they do that? And a lot of how we learn is by observing others and then mirroring those behaviors. And luckily, I had some great role models early in my career that I was able to do that from. But you think about that in the remote world. Remote world is very much about executing tasks. And here's what I need to do, and here's what I need to get done. Now, of course, there's some collaboration that happens. And at Anders, we spend a lot of time in meetings, where we have multiple people that are on. So you sit down at your desk and you do feel you're connected with everybody. But it gets really complex when you've got some people in some scenarios and some in others. But a couple ways to solve that, like a couple of examples. One would be, if you're part of the in-person crew and you're at a meeting and there's remote attendees, then if 10 people are sitting in a conference room and there's 2 people on the wall on a monitor, do you think they feel like they're part of the meeting? Do you think that they fully feel like they are equal and they can collaborate? The answer is no. So at Anders, we've made a significant push that if any participant is remote, then everybody is going to be remote. So even though there'll be 6 of us in the office, we will all go back to our individual offices and join so that everybody's on an even playing field. So that's been, one of the things that we do. The other major thing that we do, and we invest in this, is we do in-person retreats. So all of our remote employees, so our virtual CFO practice is one of the areas of the firm that's the most remote and has the most remote employees. So of the 70-person team, roughly 45, 50 of those team members are fully remote. So twice a year, we do retreats, in-person retreats. So we do one in the spring, and then 6 months later, and we try to do it somewhere fun, because if it's not, the focus on these retreats, by the way, is not technical. Like, we don't bring them in and sit them down and do a lot of technical training. You can do that remotely. The thing about getting people together is relationships. If they feel connected with their coworkers, if they feel like they matter and they're part of a team and they can actually see something, that's a whole lot different than just getting out of bed and going and sitting at a monitor and not really knowing these people or not really feeling connected. And I think that's a big challenge with remote work, is you just do your thing and it's too easy to not really be invested or connected with what you're doing. So I think that sort of the conference room example, I think, is great. And then also, like you mentioned, you may see your employees once or twice a year. Well, I think it's important for that to be an intentional decision, because otherwise we all get busy and then things just don't happen. So unless you make it a point that I'm going to get everybody together quarterly, or we're going to do this, whatever those new aspects of your culture are, you have to make sure that they're intentional, you decide upon them, and then you actually execute and you make those things happen. So those are a couple of comments around sort of why hybrid work is so hard. But I do think remote work is here to stay. And I think sort of dealing with hybrid and how this all works, I think the organizations that really figure that out are going to be a magnet for talent, because I think there's a lot of people who are that person hanging on the wall in the conference room, and they're sitting there going, I'm not part of this team. They're telling me I'm part of this team, but I'm not really part of this team. That person is going to leave and they're going to go somewhere else, and they're going to find somebody that knows how to do remote work right. And I think the employers that figure that out and give remote employees the best experience possible, I think they're going to have a huge advantage in the market.
I think absolutely. And, it's an interesting concept around, if we're on remote, we're all remote, whether you're in the office or not. And I've been, because just been on with vendors actually, where they're all in a boardroom and I'm the monitor up on the wall. And it is very distancing, and I don't think it works very well. And there's like a dynamic that's happening in the room that doesn't translate to where I am. I can't see everything. Maybe somebody walks by wearing a funny hat and they're laughing. Well, what are they laughing at? So then it's like, got to ask, well, why is everyone laughing? And it's like, well, there's mustard on your face. Oh, thanks. And it's not a good thing. And I could imagine that, I'm the customer, so it's a little bit different. It's like, I know they're not laughing at me because I'm paying them, right? But maybe they are. I don't know. But it's one of those things that can be very detrimental to the culture of an organization if people don't feel like they are in on it or part of something, or why did that person get that opportunity or see that, be able to go and access that piece of the organization. So really interesting evolution that we're seeing, and you've given some great tips on how to balance that and make it work inside of whether you're a small or large organization. Mm-hmm. I'd love to sort of hear any other thoughts around, like you've been thinking about this. You have your own podcast. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about that, and any other tips or ideas you want to share with the audience.
Sure. Yeah. So we are starting season 3 of my podcast is called But Who's Counting? And so basically what we do is we have conversations and we interview business executives and talk about their journeys and basically try to get things that they've experienced and accomplished along the way, and make sure and share that with the audience. If somebody else made a mistake and I can avoid that because I can learn from their mistake, we try to get those types of stories out there and make it meaningful. Season 3, we're specifically focusing on innovation, and we're going to touch on AI, but just there's a lot of different ways that, like we just did episode 1, and just in a quick 30-minute episode, there were 3 very creative ways that over the course of 2 decades that our guest had basically innovated, created a new line of business. During the pandemic, he was involved in the cycling business. And so basically, he figured out how to go directly to the manufacturers to get inventory because he couldn't get it otherwise. So those are the types that, sort of ideas on innovation and how that works. We're going to try to capture that in season 3. So I guess 2 ways that people can connect with me. One would be, I'm a big LinkedIn user. I think the power of LinkedIn is incredible. If you're not using it, I would recommend that you do. And people say, Dave, how much time do you spend on LinkedIn? I probably only spend 20, 30 minutes a day, but the return I get from it is significant. So connect with me on LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/Dave Hartley, Hartley. And then the other thing I'd recommend is connect with us or follow us on socials at Anders. So Anders CPA. And basically, if you look for us on any of the social sites, you'll find it there. But one of our core values is transparency. So we post a ton of stuff that people are like, wow, I can't believe you're giving that away. And it's like, well, we're giving to the community and we're, advancing the profession. So there's a lot of things that we share, a lot of thought leadership that I think, people find really valuable. So I'd say those 2 things: connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you follow Anders, then I think you're going to pick up a lot of things. In terms of our conversation, Michael, I think, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and you're right. I think your comment is very indicative of today's world, which is it's kind of overwhelming. You've got all these changes happening simultaneously. And as humans, our capacity to process that is only so much. And there just becomes a time where it starts to become overwhelming. And I think that's one of the things also sort of culturally and then as business professionals that we have to watch, which is how can we manage that pace of change? Because we need to evolve and it's going to be forced on it. What are the things that we can do? What do we know about ourselves about whether we resist or embrace change? And then how are we going to handle that over the next couple of years? Because I think that's important as well. So those are just a couple of thoughts or reactions, Michael, to your question.
Oh, very good. Very good. The podcast sounds very interesting. And you mentioned did you say 3 seasons? You got season 1.
Yep.
And you're working on 2, but you have planned for 3, or
no? So we've completed 1. Season 1 was more focused on sort of basically people understanding challenges that clients come to us with, and sort of how we help clients tackle those things. Season 2 was more about talking to business executives and hearing their stories and understand those pieces. And then for season 3, which we're starting now, that's where the focus is really going to be on innovation.
Very cool. Well, I thought, for our listener, just listening to that would be extremely valuable from understanding the mind of their potential end user, customers, those sorts of things. What is this executive dealing with? What's your mindset? How are they dealing with it? And then, of course, the first episode or the first season being, how you're dealing with challenges and how you're solving them. And then again, technology in the 3rd season. Sounds like an excellent podcast to dig into for our listeners and for myself.
Yeah, and I'd recommend, so if you go to anderscpa.com or search Anders Podcast, you'll find the podcast. It's all available via our website. But then also, if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can subscribe there. New episodes will be pushed to you. So the podcast name is But Who's Counting? So if you search for But Who's Counting Podcast, then you'll find links to several aspects of the show that way. And we do hope, we've got some great guests lined up for season 3. And so we're really excited about some of the things that we're going to cover in season 3.
That's fantastic. David, this has been an absolutely interesting conversation. I've just been so many great ideas, so many great nuggets of information and knowledge that we've shared today that you have. And I really want to thank you on behalf of our listener for joining us.
Yeah, you bet. And I truly believe, this is my passion. When I think about where I am in my career, got a decade left. I'm trying to make as significant as the change I can make. And when I think about the profession, and so I'm involved in the Missouri Society of CPAs, I'm involved, in some things at the national level. And I just, the opportunity here is so great. I'm excited about it. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunities to share my perspective with your listeners.
Hey, the pleasure has been all ours. And you know what? I think it's inspiring for our listener to be excited about the opportunity that is in front of them as well. So it's always great to hear someone who's so passionate about what they're doing and have so much knowledge. Just absolutely valuable.
Great. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
A terrific conversation with David. A big thank you to him for being on the show. And I hope you, the listener, took away some great tips that can be helpful for you in building your bookkeeping business. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.